The basis for our sermon this morning is the gospel reading. You know, yesterday was the 4th of July, and most of you probably got to get out and see some amazing fireworks and take some time apart from your daily life to celebrate these liberties and freedoms we have in America. And think for just a time about at what great price our freedoms and liberties have been won. I've been hearing a story recently about a man who really came to appreciate those liberties. See, this man was a Palestinian, and one day woke up to find that his family no longer had a home, no longer had a business. And they were uprooted. They were treated like migrants in other countries, the very lowest of the whole social class. And the whole time that anger about what happened in his home of Palestine just gnawed away at his heart. Eventually he wound up becoming a sniper and wound up working as the driver for Yasser Arafat. And after he became converted, he actually had a chance to share the gospel with Arafat. But what was really interesting to me was a part of the story where he wound up coming to the United States. And he applied for a green card, and the FBI came knocking when they heard that he was part of Fatah. And they said, "Sir, were you a part of Fatah?" And he said, "Well, I have nothing to hide. Yes, I was." So the next question was, "Would you do anything dangerous here in America?" And he said, "No." And now they were really curious. They said, "Why not? What's the reason for that?" And he said, "Listen, I've been in all kinds of countries, and I've been looked down upon, been treated as the least. I came to America, and I was accepted. No one looked down upon me for being Palestinian. No one judged me. I was just accepted for who I am. In fact, if I'm not only not going to do anything bad in America, if I hear of anything bad that someone else wants to do, you're not going to have to come ask me. I'll come tell you first." That acceptance that man felt began to change his life. Wouldn't fully change until he became a believer. We're going to be talking about that acceptance, that just as I am kind of acceptance, and how important that is. Of course, we had this amazing Old Testament reading, and where God is finally answering Job, and doesn't even directly give him an answer for all the suffering. But Job is just an amazing book that talks about suffering and how, listening to how Job is so trusting in God, even in the midst of all of these bad things happening. We have a great epistle reading too. It was a hard choice on what to focus on this morning. But God is telling us how we're new creations and how we no longer live for ourselves. We now live for Him and our lives. Well, Lillian's life even now is one of that ministry of reconciling the world to God. Wow. But we had a great gospel reading too. That's what I chose to focus on. What a great reading. Starts off, it's the same day as last week's gospel reading. It's the end of the day. So Jesus had been preaching in parables to these huge crowds. And at the end of the day, he said, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." And so the gospel says that the disciples took him just as he was in their boat. And there were other boats out. And then it says that the wind arose, and the waves began to beat against the ship, and the waves began to crash into the ship, and the disciples were afraid. Now think about this for a second. How many professional fishermen do you know that get afraid when a little storm blows up? I don't know any. They're tough guys. This wasn't just a little storm. This was a terrible, awful storm. I'm sure the disciples had a look on their face, kind of like the roadrunner would whenever he faces the audience right before he falls. Kind of that, oh no, this is the end. The end of the world as we know it. But the picture is very different from the front end of the boat to the back end of the boat. And Mark kind of pans the camera over for us. Here we have this roadrunner-looking disciples, and in the back we have Jesus quietly asleep on a cushion. And so this is where the story really changes dynamics. The disciples started off taking Jesus just as he was. And now they're afraid for their lives. They're sure this is the end of life as they know it. And they look back and there's Jesus sound asleep. Doesn't apparently care. So they go over and they make a judgment. They say, Jesus, don't you care we're about to die? They make a judgment on their Savior, the man they've been following for years now and have seen do so many miracles. They think he doesn't even care that they're apparently going to die. It's so easy to make those judgments. I get judgmental on a silly little thing. It's tire pressure. I got it honestly, though. My father used to be a motorcyclist and used to fly C-130s. So somewhere in there, he became really obsessed with tire pressure. I'm so bad now that if I see someone with low tire pressure in the parking lot, I'll take out a note and write. I couldn't help but notice your front right tire looked a little low. You might want to fix that. That's when it works well. When it backfires on me is when I'm driving along, see someone bicycling along, they've got such low pressure, they're kind of bobbing, and I just think, you fool, you're wasting so much energy. And based on how much air is in their tires, I've now judged their whole personality. That's what judgment does. It's not a good thing. I need to work on that, Lord.